Hi again, students, and welcome to the summary of Learning Unit 2 for COM 3705 called Agency, Continuity and Discontinuity in International Communication Scholarship. The focus of this unit is on who communicates internationally, the actors, and how the field of international communication has changed over time, both in practice and in theory. These are the key themes that you can be questioned on. So let's start with the IAMCR definition of international communication. IAMCR stands for the International Association for Media and Communication Research. In a study led by Chitty in 2010, scholars collectively defined IC as a field that inquires into communication cross borders between states, transnational organizations, intergovernmental bodies, civil society, diasporic communities, and individual actors, all in a global context. Now for a tip. Know this definition. It is extremely comprehensive and it names all relevant actors and approaches. There are four main categories of actors. Intergovernmental organizations such as UNESCO, the ITU, and NWICO. They are all responsible for communication policy at the global level. They are critical to debates about how to address imbalances in international communication. Then we have multinational corporations. They are the contemporary drivers of global economic integration. Major news agencies, international film companies, the international press, and magazines all control the flow, content, volume, and nature of IC. They occupy a dominant position in international communication markets. Nation states are up next, and they remain the most significant units of analysis. They are the only actors with the legitimacy to create domestic and international laws governing all other actors. In South Africa, examples include ICASA and the Department of Communications. And then finally, we have NGOs and individuals. NGOs like Greenpeace drive global activism. Thanks to ICTs, individuals are no longer merely consumers of international communication. They have become media prosumers, both producers and consumers of international media content. The concept of agency originated in sociology and refers to the capacity of an agent, whether it is a person or an entity, to act in the world. In international communication, agents are the actors, while structure refers to the flow patterns, the market, the systems and procedures through which international stories are selected and presented. A key development in recent international communication is the rise of the media prosumer, a term used in citizen journalism to describe individuals who both produce and consume international media. Previously, the ordinary person's role in IC was restricted to consuming content. New ICTs have changed this completely. This development has weakened what scholars call the effect tradition theories. These theories are focused on the one-way effect of media on passive audiences, because audiences are no longer passive. Two important case studies illustrate this. First, the Arab Spring or the MENA uprising. Individuals used social media and personal ICTs to drive political revolution that was communicated internationally. The Kony campaign, an NGO-driven global activism using YouTube and social media. This campaign also raises critical questions about how Africa and its leaders are portrayed in international communication. These are all quite important points for your assessments. This particular section gives you the historical background to how the global media system developed. And this is really a very, very basic summary. After the Second World War ended in 1945, the United States emerged as the dominant power. It used the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the World Bank, the Marshall Plan, and NATO to open global markets to US business and media. The US sought to establish a global media system in its own image. During the Cold War, the US Voice of America became the world's largest broadcasting organization. Radio Liberty, BBC World Service, and Radio Free Europe spread open capitalism. English became the global second language. In the post-Cold War period, Western transnational corporations moved abroad and established empires in foreign countries. The US film studios like Columbia, Fox, Universal, Warner Brothers, and Paramount dominated global film. US book exports grew from $12 million in 1945 to $175 million by 1970, making survival for local publishers in the Third World very difficult. By the 1970s, the non-alignment movement, NAM, began criticizing the global media system. They attacked the quantitative imbalance between North and South, the Western monopoly on global news services and cultural imperialism, the stripping of local culture and replacing it with Western values. NWICO, the New World Information and Communication Order, was the campaign that centralized these debates. UNESCO was the primary arena, and through UNESCO, the McBride Commission was established to study global communication. The Commission recommended free flow of information and a better balance and plurality of challenge. A plurality of channels. The theory best able to explain US dominance in global media is Antonio Gramsci's hegemony theory. Gramsci argues that whereas in the past hegemony, meaning dominance, was coerced through military and physical power, now hegemony works through cultural influence. It is a theater of the mind. The US used cultural influence, not force, to shape global media. Hegemony is dominance through cultural influence, not military force. Gramsci's hegemony theory is the most relevant theory for explaining, as I said, US dominance in global media. Other key terms from this section is cocalization or the McDonaldization, which is the spread of American consumer culture globally through advertising and media. TNC, a transnational corporation, which is a company maintaining facilities in more than one country and planning operations in a multi-country perspective. The McBride Commission, which is a UNESCO body which recommended free flow of information plus better balance and plurality of channels, and the international news agencies, the French Havas, German Wolf, British Reuters, US Associated Press, and the United Press, were the first significant form of global media. After World War II, the German Wolf collapsed and Havas was recreated as AFP, Agence France Presse. AP and UP, later UPI in 1958, grew in prominence. The Internet has fundamentally changed international communication. It began in 1969 with US ARPANET, which attempted to develop a network of networks. Chang in 2010 describes the Internet as having created a single communication platform, merging all forms of media into the world's largest library, theater, shopping mall, social network, news outlet, and public forum, recognizing no national border. Robinson describes media convergence as having three dimensions, and these are commonly tested. Technological convergence is where a single mode of transmission simultaneously carries voice, text, data, sound, and image. Functional convergence refers to new hybrid services combining voice, data, and text image, also called multimedia. For example, electronic encyclopedias. And then we get corporate convergence, mergers and diversifications enabling media organizations to operate across previously separate industry boundaries. Also know, I think very importantly, to look, if you are looking at MCQs, if you are looking at other assessments, it's important to know the three categories of media. Macro media, which is satellites, the internet, the World Wide Web, they all act as agents of globalization. Mesomedia, print, cinema, broadcasting, are all considered as agents of national integration. And then we have micromedia, phones, personal computers, they empower dissent at the periphery. The field of international communication scholarship has changed with each decade. It's important that you know the key focus of each decade. And obviously, we have seen even more growth now in the 2000s. But let's start with the 1950s, which was characterized by the Cold War and propaganda. International communication was dominated by journalism and mass communication theories. The world was seen as East versus West and North versus South. The focus fell on information diffusion, persuasion, influence, and the modernization theory. In the 1960s, we see the Third World and decolonization becoming more prominent. Many colonies declared their independence. Themes of development theory, modernization, westernization, and imperialism emerged. The emphasis was on communicating Western ideas to Third World countries, not with them. By 1969, scholars still had no agreed definition of international communication. Now we get to the 1970s, which sees a multidisciplinary expansion. International communication was formally recognized as a multidisciplinary field drawing on economics, politics, sociology, psychology, and others. New focuses were also added. These include culture, intercultural communication, and communication as dialogue. Previously, studies were geographically divided, and now we see the shift was towards studying issues and trends rather than regions. In the 1980s, we see an emphasis on democracy, ethics, and human rights. Civil society, women's rights, and human rights were now added. Non-state actors, multinational corporations, and NGOs were formally incorporated into international communication scholarship. Globalization's unequal impacts became a major concern. In 1994, Moana identified 10 major changing dynamics in international communication scholarship. Dynamic 1, from state-only actors to include non-state actors, and these are like multinational corporations, non-governmental organizations, and civil society. Dynamic 2, a new global conception of actors, but not universal. Distribution of information became global, but the actors controlling it were still few. Dynamic 3, an increase of conflict along cultural and civilization lines, making intercultural communication pivotal. Dynamic 4, opposing trends like nationalism versus universalism. Dynamic 5, we move towards regionalization. For example, NATO, the South African Development Community, ECOWAS. Dynamic 6, the decline of the power of national state entities, which are bypassed by global capitalism. Dynamic 7, the erosion of national sovereignty, the rise of transnationals and intergovernmental organizations. Dynamic 8, a reassertion of the dominant paradigm. Neo-modernism, neoconservatism, neoliberalism all come to the fore. Dynamic 9, a reconsideration of the epistemological basis of international communication. We see a move beyond westernization toward a truly global comparative field. And finally, Dynamic 10 and post 9/11 edition, a reconceptualization of mythology. Post 9/11, we see Huntington's clash of civilizations emerge as a key issue, and religion was added to international communication scholarship because it affects news content, international business, advertising, and international relations. Now let's look at the key theories of international communication. The dependency theory emerged to explain why peripheral southern countries lag behind economically and depend on core like northern countries, not just economically but also for their information needs. For example, news, TV programs, films, and other media content. The reason is simple. Peripheral countries lack sufficient resources, finance, human capital, skills, and technology to produce and disseminate high-quality content. Galtung in 1971 describes this as imperialism, the core exercising control over the periphery. Dependency theory has three main criticisms. One, not all periphery countries remained dependent. Japan, Taiwan, and the BRICS countries emerged economically and began producing their own content. Al Jazeera proved that periphery media can compete globally. The second criticism is that economic isolation from the core has not been proven to reduce dependency. And thirdly, the theory ignores the internal causes of underdevelopment, like corruption, censorship, and dictatorships. Cultural imperialism, according to Chang, who argues this theory is largely rooted in the old media landscape. In the internet age, the center is constantly in flux. User-generated content bypasses mainstream global media entirely. Now let's look at electronic colonialism theory. This is closely related to dependency and imperialism theories, but it focuses specifically on the exchange of communication and information hardware, software, and associated norms. MacPhail in 1981 already emphasized the key roles of multinational corporations in this process. The world system theory was developed by Wallerstein. It argues that society has moved to a single global network. Events in one part of the world have significant ripple effects elsewhere. And we see this. We see this currently, for example, in the war in Iran. Various smaller systems are linked into one giant global system. Key concepts here are core periphery, semi-periphery hierarchy, unequal exchange, capital accumulation, division of labor, conjunctive cycles, and the international state system. In the internet age, Terranian 2012 argues that the internet has brought a new deterritorialized system of centers and peripheries. And this is based on levels of science, technology, productivity, and creativity, regardless of location. New centers and peripheries now reside in transnational organizations and networks. Now let's look at reverse cultural imperialism, which refers to peripheral countries' cultural and media products gaining international reach and competing with core countries. Examples include TV Globo from Brazil and Televisa from Mexico that exports from Latin America and Europe. So it's exported from to Latin America and Europe. Al Jazeera, which is penetrating and has shown its penetration into US and UK markets, is also very popular in Africa. Bollywood and Nollywood, that started breaking into international film markets, and then also African art gaining international market presence through tourism. In WICO, the New World Information and Communication Order, was the campaign within UNESCO that challenged the North-South media imbalance. The McBride Commission recommended, and we've mentioned it now several times, a free flow of information and a better balance and plurality of channels. Plurality means more than one, plural. So let's look at the key points to remember here. We want to first look at our definition by the IIMCR, which says that international communication is communication across borders between states, transnationals, IGOs, NGOs, and individuals. We have 4 important international communications actors. These are intergovernmental organizations, multinational corporations, nation states, and then NGOs and individual citizens. Look at the concepts of agency and prosumer. Agency is your capacity to act. A prosumer is an individual who produces and consumes international communication. Hegemony, according to Gramsci, looks at modern dominance. Cultural influence, not military force. The US shaped global media in this way. Convergence, according to Robinson, we have 3 types: technical convergence, functional convergence, and corporate convergence. Then look at the different media types: macro, meso, and micro. The dependency theory says the periphery depends on the core for content, but there are 3 criticisms. We see the criticisms in the come from the emergence of BRICS, the idea that isolation doesn't work, and that internal causes are ignored. The world systems theory looks at the core, the periphery, and the semi-periphery, and how the internet creates deterritorialized new centers. Electronic colonialism, developed by MacPhail in 1981, multinational corporations spread international communication hardware and software norms globally. Reverse cultural imperialism, Al Jazeera, Bollywood, Nollywood, TV Global, etc. They all challenge Western cultural dominance. And that's it for this summary of Learning Unit 2. Next up, Learning Unit 3. Thanks for joining and listening, students.